Welcome to Virtual Agile Meetings, everyone. We're going to be talking about OKRs today, and we've got Tim and myself. We're going to be taking you through a presentation. And Tim, would you like to kick us off?
Absolutely. So first, I just want to thank everyone so much for making it out tonight. I know it's super late for most of you, I suspect. I don't know where we all are based around the world, but I think for a lot of people here, you're going to be based in Australia. So it is going to be quite late for you. So thank you so much for making the time. And I know too, it's very hard at the moment. Everyone's on video all day. So coming on and jumping onto a video at night is an extra special thing. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. So I'm Tim from Skillfire. We're all about helping bold companies really set a clear strategy, create audacious and achieve audacious goals, and build high-performing teams. So we work at all those sort of layers. And today we're going to be talking about those audacious goals, so OKRs. There's a whole bunch to unpack. So we're going to focus in on creating high-impact outcomes for teams. How would you structure this for a team? So that's going to be the sort of core focus of it. Doesn't mean we're not going to touch on other areas. And if questions come up, we can definitely delve into other things. But the focus is going to be at the team level. Ian's had some really great experience with this at RBS and had some really great thoughts on it. So we sort of brought our material together. We're going to be going through a bit of a deck and in-camp with some really exciting exercises as well. So this should be good fun, interactive. So if we're planning to jump on and sort of just coast through tonight, probably not the right thing. We're going to be quite interactive and it should be a whole bunch of fun. So get on board. What we've got here, and just for anyone that's just joined us, is a Slido, I guess poll we'll call it. So it's going to be a number of exercises. It's going to use this tool. So what I'm going to suggest is, my phone's hooked up over here, so I can't actually grab it. But normally I'd go hold up my phone and go on your phone, have Slido running, and then on your computer, have this going. Or if you've got a phone and an iPad, something like that, have a different view so you can do the Slido polls as we go. So we're going to have a few of those and a few quizzes and things like that. The intent here is by letting me know what questions you've got, I'm going to try and pick out some of those and cover those off as we go. If I can't cover it off, might have some material that I can refer to off the back of this, or we might be able to do a bit of a revisit and follow-up session on this. So we're going to give it a bit of a crack. I'm just going to have a bit of a look now at what we've got here. So senior management to adopt OKRs. My standard line with that is you offer idle threats. So get buy-in for OKR in finance and sales. Yeah, really good questions. Meaningful OKRs at various levels. A really good one. Respond to somebody saying they're just rehashed MBOs and KPIs. Ooh, yeah, we can come with that one too. I'm gonna have to come back through these to make sure we cover that off at the end. Some good stuff here. OKR with Scrum and Agile. Yeah, so we're going to cover that off. A little bit of Kanban as well. So how do you bring these elements in together? What else? So an OKR cycle at any point. Yeah, cool. So that's a good one. At a team or function level, about the whole organization on board. So I think we can cover a lot of these off. Have I missed any up here? We can, I'm not sure how deep we'll go on the tools front. There is a little bit that Atlassian does with OKRs. There's other sort of supporting tools that integrate. I don't know how much we'll cover that off today, but let's see how we go. And what happens on priority management when organization rates OKRs at business unit level and not organization wide. So we'll see if we can come back to a few of those. That's quite good. An OKR life cycle. We do have a slide on that, so we can cover that off. And I think I might leave this one here and then we can revisit these. So is there any optimal team size to work with OKRs? I'm going to answer that right now. There's some good data around teams and high-performing teams and the sort of sizing that you want to have. There's a bit of research by someone called Dunbar that sort of looked at the different sizing and scales of team. I'm going to oversimplify here. I generally suggest that it's really teams of any size for a team that can work well, that has autonomy and can work on something end to end. So we're going to talk about mission teams a little bit later on the back of or throughout this session. But OKRs work really well where you have a team and they can do the whole job end to end. So if they need to deliver something now, whether that's a products team, whether that's a HR team that's doing training, whoever it might be, they should have that capability so they can make it happen end to end. Where there's a lot of dependency, OKR becomes a little bit tricky because then you're doing a whole bunch of horse trading around the organization. So size, again, good team sizes tend to be sort of 7 plus or minus 2. That seems to be the magic number, but it does vary. Anyway, quick way to answer that one. I might crack on though from there. Ian, anything from you, mate, before I move on?
No, no. Thank you.
Cool. Move on. Feel
Yep.
free to poke me if I'm taking too long. So Ian and I wanted to set some OKRs for the session tonight so we could actually get some interesting insights. So there's a few objectives and an objective and a few key results off the back of that we want to achieve. So we want to leave the most engaging introductory talk on OKRs. So we want this to be really punchy, really interactive. We want to get a satisfaction out of score out of 5 out of 5. So at the end of this, we're going to check base with you how we all feel about it. I want to make sure everyone walks away with something to do. So this is going to be more, we're going to do a poll on the first one. The second one is more just kind of making sure that everyone has something to do off the back of it. And 15 people reach out to us off the back of this and say, yep, it was valuable. Because if you come along, you find that it's important and you like it that much that you want to give us a bit of feedback, that'd be really fantastic. So those are our OKRs for the session. So let's see if we hit them or not. It'd be very interesting. So the problem with traditional goals. First, we have too many things on the go and a whole bunch of box ticking going on. So what we tend to find is for a lot of organizations, they have a balanced scorecard or something like that, which means they've got a lot of measures and it's very hard to focus on what is the operational health measures of the business, the things that we just got to keep stable and run versus what are the growth measures we've got to hit. And so what that tends to cause is with a lot of things going on, a lot of these KPIs tend to be sort of end state deliverables and things like that. So some KPIs will be around your sort of good metrics, but also you will see KPIs, even though they're supposed to be indicators, as deliver a certain system or a certain product or a certain capability. Those kind of things mean we get very distracted and removed from the outcome and focus more on this is the list of stuff that we need to do. So that is some of the challenges that we see with the more traditional goal setting. We see misalignment across the organization because it's very hard to tell when you've got a balanced scorecard and a whole bunch going on around really where are the focus points for us as a business. What's most important for us right now? What teams are focusing on what part of the scorecard and where do they share dependencies? So traditional goal setting, you just don't tend to see that. Often, again, they're not really outcome focused. They're more about sort of just getting things done, achieving certain goals. And often you see that on PDPs and things like that too. You know, we're going to deliver certain numbers of products. We're going to go on a certain training course. It's not so much about the outcome that we're driving. Probably the biggest thing is they fail to really link back to the organization's purpose and its strategy. So although there has been some thought go into it at some point, they tend not to actually be there connecting the team day to day so that they're thinking about the strategy. Why am I working on this and how does that link into that strategy? So those are some of the high level challenges that we see with goals that traditional organizations, again, that comes with balanced scorecards and those kind of things. So objectives and key results, really, really simple. The objective is the destination. What are you trying to achieve? The key results, well, they're a measure of how you're getting there. How do you know that we've achieved that and actually made progress on that objective? There's a hard part though, and that's actually basically the whole framework that we're talking about here. So one thing is we're shifting to an outcome mindset. And that's a really big difference where we're going from focusing on delivering projects and initiatives and business cases and whatever else you're doing to actually shifting numbers. We're actually trying to create customer outcomes that actually drive customers in different ways. That's a really big mindset shift. And we're starting to re-tinker and rethink as a business. How do we know the actions that we're doing are going to end up in the result that we want? So we don't want to worry just about sales. We want to know if our customers are happy, are they then going to buy more of our product? And is that going to drive out sales? So happy our customers is the outcome that we're looking for. And that is a big sort of shift for organizations. So as I said, the framework and the operationalization of it, bringing it into the heartbeat of the business is really, really tricky. Change management is also the big one, right? And we all know that change management is so hard to get right. And so it's a really important thing that when you're introducing OKRs, really, really doubling down on that. In fact, if there was one tip and one thing I spoke about tonight, aside from understanding what the structure is, if you are going to go and apply the OKR framework, the number one tip and the number one factor to success is be very clear on why you're doing it and the benefit it has for teams. Because if you just start rolling it out and they don't have that connection, you're going to cause all sorts of conflict and tension. So, okay, what is an objective and key result? Let's get a little bit more tangible here. So we work with a little bit with engineering companies, and they love the space sort of conversation. To be honest, this goes way past my knowledge of and understanding of astrophysics, but anyway, they seem to like it, so I give it a go. So if our vision is landing on Mars, that's where we want to get to. The flight path to get to Mars, that's going to be our strategy. This is the path that we're going to take to get there. It's going to be unique to us. This is our mission. We're going to be doing this, and we're going to be following this certain path. Your objective and key result is just your very first step in that. So in this case, it's going to be us getting into the stratosphere. Now, you could just have a goal of getting to the stratosphere, but as probably most of you know, there's a lot of ways to get into the stratosphere, but you want to get there safely, and you want to know that you're heading in the right direction. So we're not going to put a big bomb under a rocket and blast it off and shoot everyone up into space, right? You're going to want to know, okay, we're going to have a controlled release. We want to have a certain trajectory that we're going in, a certain speed that we're going at. Things that are going to tell us that we're heading in the right sort of direction. We want to move up at this certain pace. That is your objective and key result. So it also is, not only is it a destination of what you're trying to achieve, which is the objective, get into the stratosphere, the key results are going to tell you that you're taking the right direction, the right progress, and the right speed. Now, there's another metric or set of metrics that you need to be aware of, and they're your health metrics. And those are the kind of things that tell you, are you running well as a business? And this is the difference between an objective and key result and a KPI. The KPIs are we working within a safe bounds? So things like petrol levels, the amount of fuel that we've got in the tank, the amount of vibration. Obviously, if the ship's vibrating too much, we need to take some corrective action. If things go really bad, then we've got to eject everyone out so we can safely come back to Earth. So that's the sort of distinction that we have between these different things. Now, who's using them? There's a whole bunch of companies. I don't probably need to go through that here. All around the world, it was sort of popularized by Andy Grove quite a long time ago. It was starting off out in Intel and really sort of got popularized in Intel. And that's sort of, it went from managed by objectives. It's sort of the next version of that. John Doerr picked it up, and he was working as part of the engineering team at Intel, then went into venture capitalists and basically started investing in a lot of companies like Google. Came in and said, okay, what are you focusing on? What are your priorities? Do you have a way to set structure? And the answer was nope. So they said, okay, well, why don't we try objectives and key results? And that's where it has gained a whole bunch of popularity recently. I think we see there that, you know, there is a little bit of people wondering whether it's more of a, what's the right word? Bit of a fad. You know, I think it is so widespread and so old that it's not really a fad. It is going through a really big cycle of popularity. And it's one of the sort of things where companies that nail it and understand the concept and understand how it's shifting their culture and mindset, they'll be doing it now and they'll be doing it in the future. Those that can't make that connection, they'll drop it and move on. Now, does that mean that it'll keep surging popularity? Don't know. That's the sort of unknown answer. But Google will be doing this today. They're going to be doing it tomorrow and on time.
Question, Tim?
Yeah, I think maybe we'll have questions at the end, but let's go for it and we'll just sort of do a quick one, yeah.
So how big a chunk do you take out of your strategy for your first objective? And if you want to answer it later, that's okay. I just figured in context with what you're saying now. It's a really good question. It's something that you think is reasonable within your cycle, your sort of planning cycle. So this is where this sort of, this I guess, message here starts to break down a little bit. It's going to be for you as a business, you've got to work out how quickly do you need to maneuver. So for larger organizations, you know, it's probably going to be quarterly for them. If you're a relatively small startup and, you know, maybe you're sort of sub 50 people, it might even be every sort of 6 weeks that you want to be setting these sort of targets for. And like anyone who knows agile ways of working here, if you've got a scrum team or something like that, you're going to be running with a 2-week sort of cadence as a scrum team or a 1 week, whatever that is. That's consistent and the same. You know, you don't have a 1 week sprint and then a 2 week sprint, things like that. OKRs are much the same. You're going to have that consistent cadence. Can I add something, Tim? Yeah. There's probably a few people who've never heard of OKRs before. So my way of explaining an OKR is it's basically how you convert long-term goals, i.e. strategy and vision, into action for your next sprint. Royal Bank of Scotland, we do quarterly OKRs. So, I mean, your vision might be 3 years, your strategy might be 1 year, and your objectives are quarterly. And then you break that down into sprints, and Tim might touch on that a bit later. Yeah, really good call out. Yeah, so if we look down sort of the core sort of elements of what an OKR is all about. So one thing is they're about stretching for amazing. So they enable and allow for a little bit of failure
and this is where we score OKRs at the end of a quarter, and we want to hit about a 70% success rate. And so by having that 70% success rate, I'm really struggling with that word tonight, you're going to be striving, but also you're not going to be sandbagging and trying to nail all of your goals. And that's where, different to MBO and KPIs, a big fundamental difference is there's an expectation of failure. And there's different ways of cutting this. Google, they do effectively 2 key results are committed and 2 are stretch. And so there's 2 that you kind of have to get a score of 1 on, which is achieved, and the other 2 is a 70% score. So it does vary a little bit between different organizations, and it can apply differently to the objective level as well. Sometimes you'll have an objective that's a stretch, and sometimes you'll have an objective that is as a sort of fixed outcome that they're looking for. And that's kind of advanced sort of territory, but it does mean that there's different implementations and different ways of doing it. The point is it does allow for failure, and there's expectation that you're not going to nail your goals every time. And if you do, you're sandbagging, and you'll actually get penalized for that. You've got to score that back down and get about an average of 70% or so. They align and connect teams, so both vertically and horizontally. So generally what will happen is you'll have an OKR conversation as an organization. What are our goals for the quarter ahead? You might do things like surveys and in talking to team members and all these kind of things. You understand what are the priorities. As a business, then you set the direction that you're heading for, get feedback on that draft set of OKRs, and then teams set their OKRs that point to that. And generally that means teams at all levels. They will all collectively point into that. And there's a bit of this organic sort of exercise to getting alignment throughout the organization. There's one thing where people talk about cascade, and that's how KPIs are a little bit different too. They sort of go one layer at a time, and it's a long and burdensome process. And that's why you probably do it once a year, if not less frequently. And that is quite a hard thing to get through, versus having it so everyone is pointing towards a central sort of thing and then retrospectively reviewing and tweaking to align. It's a really powerful way of doing it. They tend to be leading indicators. I'm going to talk more about this in a moment, but basically the goals we're setting are going to be telling us that we're heading in the right direction. So that as soon as I start working on something, pretty quickly I can work out, am I taking the right steps, and am I making progress, or am I not making progress? And the last one I talk about is directional autonomy. So this is about having clear focus on what's most important, and how do we really make sure we can cut the noise and drive those sort of outcomes. Now, back to that alignment one, teams will work together to sort out dependencies, and they might even share goals so they can actually link up to each other and get that collective focus. But it is that, how do we all together focus on what's most important? Ian, did you have something on this one too?
Just to stress the importance of psychological safety and the ability to say that we didn't make it, we tried, but we got close and we didn't make it. That's has to be coached at the beginning. It's expected. Half the time you're going to fail. Although it may not actually be a failure because it's an improvement still.
100%. And psychological safety is so important. Normally I'd have a slide here that talks about the traits of a high-performing team. And you can Google this from Google, their work, Project Aristotle, where they've researched around what are the traits of a high-performing team. It is such a central part to this. And again, Google practice OKRs, so it's no surprise. But the psychological safety to accept and allow for failure and learning and improving is just absolutely fundamental. Here's an example. I'm going to move through this one quite quickly. What I want to call out here is that the objective really is that aspirational, really sort of inspiring comments or call to action for teams. So, here we've got secure our funding, our future by becoming profitable. So this is probably a scale-up business. They've probably been running off getting investment to keep going. Now they're really about, okay, let's level this up. Let's actually shift into a profitable kind of mode. And their key results are underpinning that. And ideally, a lot of those key results you can see there are those leading indicators. So they're knowing that they're doing the right kind of things and driving the right sort of direction. When they're setting this OKR, they're being very clear around how we're going to measure this. Do we have the mechanism in place to measure these kind of things? Because that's a really big trick as well. It's great to have a measure in mind, but how do you actually measure it? Do you have those measures? And then in this case here, we've got the initiatives that we're going to do to make this happen. So a whole bunch of different activities. Sometimes those initiatives will apply at the key result level. Other times they'll apply at the objective level, and they're going to move multiple of those key results. And anything from you, Matt? I think you had a call out for that one. Sorry, I just got a text on here. I wasn't sure if that was right into this. Too many screens.
Just if you look at key result number 3, that's a really well formed key result, because it's got a metric, so we know how to measure it, and it's got a starting value and a target value. You might see a key result that talks about increasing a metric by 10%. And this is maybe a bit of an advanced point, but increasing a metric by 10%, that's a reasonably good key result, but really you want to change that 10% into a starting value and a target value. It's a warning sign that you may not ever have used that metric before, and maybe you have to go and baseline it to find out what your current starting value is. Yep.
That's a really important one. So what do you think the value is for teams having that to from sort of metric in there?
It forces them to make sure they've got the starting value. Because if you're saying we've never measured cycle time, we want to decrease it by 10%, well, during a quarter, it means you've got to baseline that metric and then decrease the amount. So 100%. It forces them to, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good example. It's another mechanism to get that alignment that we keep talking about. Very powerful. Every slide deck needs a quote, and they are better if you have Steve Jobs present quotes. So that's why this is here. But it is very important, right? It is all about focus. And often when I'm talking about OKRs to organizations, the question of, okay, what's most important? It's a really challenging question to ask people. I mean, look, even if I asked everyone here tonight, what's most important in your life, right? You know, like, is it your kids? Is it your partner? Is it, you know, your dog? Is it, you know, your house? Like, it's very hard to make a call. But if I ask you a question of, well, over the next 6 weeks, if nothing were to change except for one number, what would that be? All of a sudden that starts to reframe the idea, and you start to think, okay, well, maybe there is just one thing that that I can move forward. If everything else is important, that's fine, but there's one thing that is particularly important. So really important quote, this one. I'm going to go through quite quickly on this one because I spoke about this already. Generally, you're going to have your sort of hierarchy to this. You're going to have the mission of what you're trying to achieve. It's your big picture. It's the vision of what the future looks like. You've then got your strategy. Yeah, that's going to be 1 to 3 years. The strategy, different organizations and different cultures behave a little bit differently at the sort of vision and mission level. You know, they might all be about really trying to connect with something that's tens or hundreds of years ahead if you're working with an organization from Japan. There's others where if you're a startup, you know what, you might be 1 year sort of out from a vision and mission perspective. Regardless, they are the big picture. They are your guiding North sort of star. Your OKRs are your mechanism to take valuable slices out of your strategy and make progress towards achieving that vision. What I said earlier about the objectives, the initiatives and the projects and those kind of things, I point them to the objective level just because sometimes a piece of work will actually impact multiple key results. So at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve this objective. That's what really matters. The key results are how we're going to measure that success. So we want to align our initiatives with that objective. And again, you can have a secondary point of alignment to individual key results if that's what's going to help you get that sort of visibility. And we'll come back to that in a moment as well. So this is a little bit of a contentious one, but I want to set some context on this. We also do a bit of work with NGOs, and so they've got teams who work all around the world. And so this has been a useful example for us to use. It's a little bit raw during a pandemic. However, we can actually see some of the systemic effects going on around us and some of the lag effects around sort of leading metrics and lagging metrics as well. So I'm gonna go with this example, and I hope it doesn't trigger anyone because it is a bit of a contentious one right now, but to me, it really is important in context of the moment. So this is us understanding what's the difference between an outcome versus an output, and how can we actually know that we're doing the right things? So this example here is save lives in one village of a developing nation by reducing preventable diseases. Now, the reason why we've got a metric in there of one village is it gives us focus. It gives us a bound and a context around what this objective is trying to achieve. It's not going to try and save all villages. It's giving us a very clear bounds. This is the one space that we're working within. Now, traditionally, you'd see a lot of goals look something like that first key result, which is 100 people attend training courses about hygiene. And that's going to reduce, or the idea they're going to learn about preventing communicable diseases and things like hand washing and these kind of things. So that should help us save people's lives. Now, as we all know, a lot of people go on training, and in reality is we're actually seeing this in Melbourne at the moment as well, where people are going on training, and I was hearing on the news, people are wearing PPE and they're taking this all off, but they're recontaminating themselves while they're taking it off. Then they're not washing their hands for the recommended period. So they've done the training. They've all ticked that box of going through the training, but the actual behavior observation isn't there. And through this behavioral analysis, they're actually seeing that there is this inconsistency. And like literally this was on the news today. So that's an output, is the training. I can pump out the training. I can get 100 people through it, tick, done, Has it moved the needle at all? Who knows? But I've done it. That's an output. Another thing is you could release features and those kind of things. They're all outputs. Then there's the sort of end result. Now, this is going right to the other extreme. So less than 10 people die of preventable disease. The problem with this key result is it's too late by the time you hit those numbers. So if people start passing away, it is already happened. There's nothing you can do to help them or bring them back. And once you've breached that number, it's very hard to course correct it. In fact, because there's that lag between when someone gets sick and they're unfortunately going to pass away, it is a really detrimental kind of thing. So that's not a good key result to have. We can then get into more of the leading and lagging outcome-based measures. And so as an example, and this is exactly what the ABC were going through today, where they were looking at this study, they were looking at the observation of how people were behaving. So this example is that the observation survey shows 80% increase in hand washing with soap. So if I had have done this, not that I'm equipped to do this, but if let's say the medical body had done the proper training with our medical staff and actually observed the impact of that, they would have realized their initial round of training wasn't having the sort of desired behavioral impact. And so they could have course corrected that right away. And that's what this is about. That's a leading indicator. Seeing that behavioral change is a leading indicator. If we come down to a lagging outcome-based indicator, we're looking at the rate of communicable diseases. So it's still before the final destination, the end result, and there's still time to intervene, but it's a lagging result. So we really want to try and bring this forward. So this sets a little bit of context. This next diagram is a little bit crazy, but it's going to help us understand what does the flow of time mean from a metric perspective. Geez, Dame, I can see Damon's just lost it and walked off now. He's found it too hard. So we're starting here on an output. That's early in the time piece. So we're starting off in a certain destination. And that can be things like customer awareness. So we're doing marketing and those kind of things. It can be product innovation, new features, those sort of things. And it can be things like throughput. So the amount of features and that sort of stuff we're getting out. So they're sort of, that's a team metric. You know, you're getting more sort of stuff out, but who knows if it's actually really having an impact. Then we have this sort of range going from, and can you see my mouse here? Is that showing up?
Yeah, I can. I'm not sure if it's visible on people's mobiles there.
Yeah, we'll find out. So on the green cells here, we can see that those are really leading indicators here. They're heavily behavioral based. So time to completion. So this might be, let's say for a checkout, we're doing a shopping cart checkout. The time to complete, if we can make it really fast time to complete, and we can make it really high success rate that they get through it really quickly, well, that means we're going to have a higher completion rate. If we've got a higher completion rate and it's fast, we're going to have higher satisfaction. If they're more satisfied with the product, well, they're going to be more engaged with it, but they're also going to tell their friends about it. So that's going to be a leading indicator here for sales. And as you can see, there's almost this structure of, while this is still a leading indicator, it's on a scale. It's not the greatest leading indicator, but it is starting to give us a bit of insight. Now, we can follow this all the way right down to the other end where we've got profit and loss over on the other side. Now that's the end state. Once you've made a bunch of sales, you've got your money come in, you've spent a bunch with advertising, these kind of things, there's nothing else you can do at that point. As a business, you know, you've kind of landed in your end destination there. So really we want to understand, what are we trying to achieve and how do we bring that further forward so that we know as we go, we're taking the right steps. So if my key result was about creating an awesome checkout experience, if that was my objective, my key result was about increasing the time to complete or reducing the time to complete, then I could very quickly make some tweaks and changes to the shopping cart. And if I've got a good setup, I could do that in 20 minutes and see, does that nudge the figure forward? And I know as a business, after doing this sort of understanding, that this is actually going to flow through all the way to the bottom line. So it's a bit of a tricky one to get, but I know once you sort of have a look at it and you kind of see how it hangs together, it can set some good sort of context there. I'm going to go through this quite quickly. I've talked already a little bit about an objective and key result and KPIs and what the difference is. So in the very simplest form, an OKR is about change. You're trying to change a measure. You're trying to get an outcome. You're trying to achieve an objective. And that is about moving a number. You can measure success by moving that number. So if the current customer satisfaction level is here, if I want to get it up there, then my key result is going to be about changing that metric to that point. A KPI, on the other hand, generally, and they tend to work best, and again, there can be strategic KPIs, but they don't function very well and you've got to nail them. So where we find it works best is if you have it as a health metric. So if let's say I run a call center and my main thing is about having first call resolution. So if you call up, I solve your problem first time on the call, problem solved, you can then move on. Then this is a really good measure to say, okay, as long as I'm solving those customer calls the first time for the majority of the time, we're good. And as long as I track that path, that's fine. Sometimes a KPI can become an OKR because, well, our first call resolution is going to heck. So this number's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. You know what? This quarter, we've got to sort this out. Or this 6 weeks, we've got to sort this out. And so I'm going to set an OKR that is about nailing our customer experience. And for the call center, it's going to be about nailing our customer experience for the call center. And one of my key results is going to be about getting that first call resolution under control. And I use that OKR to drive that number back down. Once it's back in the green territory, great, move on. Another great quote. Again, you got to be I'm just going to paraphrase this. You just got to be really damn careful with goals as well. If you set the wrong target and the wrong measure, people will go hell for leather to achieve that. And they will do horrible things if it means they're going to try and get there, if it's going to be successful. And if they're personally measured as a success as by achieving that goal, then they're going to do whatever it takes. So we've got to be very careful when structuring our OKRs. And regardless, and this is just a lesson we need to know as goals in general, but OKRs, because of the focus and the sort of veracity that can come with them, you've got to be very careful and well thought out. Okay, right. So Ian, I might handball to you, mate. Have a drink of water myself.
Yep. So what we've got coming up in a minute, everyone, is we've got a quiz using Slido. So get your Slido ready on your other screen. What I've put together is a series of questions asking you whether you think a statement is an objective, a key result, or an initiative. And some of them are easy and some of them we've made deliberately tricky. So a quick recap. So we'll stop after each question to see what people think, and then we'll discuss and try and work out why, if people got tricked, why they were tricked. So quick recap. An objective is a tough but inspiring destination, and it shouldn't really be measurable because the measures go into the key result. So you shouldn't really see numbers inside an objective unless it's a special example like Tim's scope limiting to one village. A key result is measures how we're going to get there. It should have a metric, should name a metric, should have a starting value and a target value where we want to get to. Initiatives are experiments that we believe will move the metrics in our key results in the right direction. There's no particular format as far as I know, it's just what you're planning to do. So when you look at these questions, the thing to keep in mind is if it might be a trick question, think about, do I have direct control over this? So for example, it's increasing marketing spend. I have direct control over that because I can get my credit card out and slap it down and spend extra marketing dollars right now. But if something happens as a result of your activities, you don't have direct control over that. It has to, you're hoping your activities are going to cause a change and cause a result that is not an initiative. It's more likely to be a key result. So Tim, I think you need to drive this. So can we go to the first question? Actually, any questions on that before we get going? Are my instructions clear? Maybe we'll bring up the first question and hopefully it's obvious from that.
And so the person who gets the lowest score, we're going to publish their name on LinkedIn. Right? That was. So everyone bust out your phones, jump onto slido.com and put in that magical code there if you haven't already. You can also take a snap of that QR code. These are people's names that are popping up. Feel free to throw in a fake name. We'll still work out who you are when we publish your name, so that's fine. I might move on to the next question. I'm hoping people can still put their names in as they go, so we'll find out.
It's an experiment.
Okay, seeing a few more pop in. All right. So
first question. The statement is give away one free driving lesson for every 10 lessons booked. Do you think it's an objective, a key result, or initiative? How much time should we give them, Tim? So 10 seconds and then discussion time.
Just give them a moment. Yeah, we'll see where the numbers get up to, but yeah.
It'll start coming in live with it.
In a moment, I'll flick across and we can start seeing the results. I don't want to load it up too much, but it's slowed down now. So let's flick across and see How are we going?
Okay. Most people said initiative, which is actually the right answer. Giveaway free driving lesson is something you have full control over, so it's an initiative. Would anyone in the key result section be brave enough to explain why they thought it was a key result? If not, that's cool. Let's go on to the next question then.
I think just to call out.
We'll get the hang of this anyway. There's more.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so look, just to call out too, I just want to say this is actually really good. So I did this same exercise with an organization that have just started OKRs, and they didn't get anywhere near this good. So pat on the back to the whole audience here tonight. You clearly know your stuff, and that is a really tricky one, by the way. So well done.
Next question.
Here we go. So of course, initiative.
Increase revenue from 100 to 120K.
I think the caveat here, just to call out to everyone, we're not saying these are good examples of an objective or key result or initiative. Yeah. They're just examples. And so if we made it too obvious to it, it might be a bit easy to game it. We've intentionally made it pretty tricky to go, yes, okay.
There are some dodgy ones in here.
And you got to think about this. If you're working in your business and, you know, again, this stuff's hard to get right. So people will make these kinds of mistakes. You've got to be able to pick it up and see what they're trying to say with this kind of stuff. Yeah. All right.
Okay, most people think key result. Key result is the right answer. So we've got a metric, which is revenue. We've got a starting value and a final value, and it is not in our direct control. We have to. It comes as a result of other work. That's why it's a key result and not an initiative.
No, I think one thing that would have turned this into an objective, and not saying it would be a good objective, but an objective nonetheless, would be if I said increase revenue for our 30 largest clients or something like that. That might have been your objective, because again, you're using the metric as a bound then to say, well, it's this cohort. But when you're talking about a change in metric, that's where it's a key result.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
The interior of the shop, the Trendies in Southend Shopping Centre. And I don't live far from there, so that's why I put it in as an example. Actually, I haven't been to Southend for, what, 4 or 5 months now? Probably longer. I don't miss it either.
All right.
Objective is the right answer. Well done, everyone. So there's no numbers in there. It's aspirational, kind of cool as well if you're an employee. Yeah, let's make it trendy. So that's why it's an objective.
And it's a really tricky one too. You look at that and you could easily flip between that being an initiative, but it is that you can see the language and it's trying to be that little bit inspirational.
It's not something you can just push a button and make it happen. So it's as a result of other things. Be the coffee shop of choice in Lygon Street. Yep. Most people have got objective, which is also true. It's not something they have direct control. It's it's an aspirational objective.
Now, if it said something like, get a new coffee machine to make great coffee or something like that, I'd probably put that down as an initiative, right? Because you're talking about very specifically, here's what we're doing, here's what we're going to buy. You know, that's getting down to the objective level. The initiative level.
Yeah, and it's something it's an initiative because you can just go out and buy that new coffee machine.
Yep.
Grow new loyalty card sign-ups from $750 to $1,000 per month. Okay, Tim. Well done, everyone.
Boom.
That is a very well-formed key result. So well done, everyone. Double your cross-selling between lines of business. Tricky one.
This is a good one. See the numbers coming through a little bit slower on that one. Oh, here we go.
Okay, looks like we've tricked a few people. This is actually a key result because we're doubling a metric. It's not a greatly well-formed key result. It would be better formed if it said increase. Yeah, boo. It'd be better if it said increase cross-selling between lines of business from 50K to 100K as a starting point and end point. But it actually says the same thing without numbers. So it's a poorly written key result. Could be written better.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's so easy to confuse. And to be honest, you could probably argue the toss that it falls into these different categories, but because it is talking about moving a metric, it does fall into that key result territory, right? And hence, if you're doing this kind of stuff, it's really tricky if this is what you're sending out across the business. People are seeing this kind of stuff.
Serve a glass of champagne or beer to shoppers on VIP evenings. How are we doing for time, Tim? We've got 10 to. Okay. Yep, got that. Most people got that right. It's an initiative. It's something you've got complete control over. So it's an initiative.
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure how many more of these we've got of these, but that is bang on.
Let's do 2 more.
2 more, excellent. And then we're gonna get into the sort of Scrum and Kanban side of stuff. So hold out for that one. I'm gonna kick this along here. Let's see. Good.
Yep, it's an initiative. Something you can grab your credit card and do immediately. So you've got full control of that pretty much. Let's make the next one the last one.
Last one, here we go.
Decrease the number of coffees needed to get 1 free from 6 to 5. You only need 5 now to get free coffee.
Free coffee a day, yay!
It is an initiative. So well done, everyone. Very good.
That's really good.
Initiative because you just need to print the little card and change it from 6 to 5. It's actually something you can influence very easily. So it's something you can do. It's an initiative.
Yeah. Now, if you're doing this as
it's formed as a key result. That's why it's a trick one because it's got 2 numbers from 6 to 5. It looks a bit like a key result. So don't feel bad if you put key result. It's tricky.
Yep. And if you change that slightly so that it was an increasing customer retention by having a coffee card or changing the number of free coffees you get with every purchase or whatever, something like that. Again, wouldn't be a well-formed key result, but again, you're talking about the outcome that you're trying to achieve. You're trying to increase retention, so that would shift it back into key result territory. Yeah, really good one. We're gonna go through those. All right. So I'm going to move quite quickly so we can cover everything off. So again, we have a good cadence behind OKRs, and I've got another slide on this, which we can come back to a little bit later on in the session. But basically, this is nested within several layers of operations. So you've got your big picture strategy. A lot of business will have their annual strategic objectives. That might be an annual OKR. We're getting down then to the sort of quarterly level, and that's where you set your OKR quarterly. Now, I'm actually being very clear here to say OKR because it's another tip. Set one OKR when you're starting out on your journey. So Alphabet, they do everything under the sun, from autonomous cars to the Google machine to YouTube and all this sort of stuff. They have between 4 and 5 for Alphabet. So regardless of how big you are as a business, you really want to keep it down, focus as much as possible. So one little tip there. This is more for executive operating rhythm kind of stuff, but still just worth sort of calling out. The monthly strategic is more for executives. I'm not going to talk about that here. Weekly operational is how are you running as a team. If you're a Scrum team, that's your sprint planning. You're checking in on your metrics and those kind of things. You're also going to be scoring your OKRs and those kind of activities. And again, for Scrum, you choose between where you're going to cover this off in your sprint planning or you're going to cover it off in your sprint review. Either way, this is where you're going to be sort of having that weekly operating rhythm of checking in on your OKR and giving a confidence score. So that's really, really important. So you're living and breathing that OKR. Because the OKR takes a slice out of that strategy, it's connecting you to your purpose and your strategy, and you're checking on it every week. So you're living and breathing it. It's a really fundamental part to it. And then your daily check-in, that's more of a team thing. That's if you're an Agile team, that's your daily stand-up. Same thing if you're an executive team, you're going to do the same kind of thing, but it's just slightly different. A lot of, Lencioni's work is really strong on this from an executive perspective. So if you're wanting to look at sort of executive ways of working, it's very, very powerful. Lencioni's The Advantage, great book to read. Doesn't specifically talk about OKRs, but you can see how they fit nicely into it. Very quickly on this one too. Look, not all teams are going to be purely focusing on their OKRs or on OKRs. If you're a call center, you're going to be mostly on the phone, right? If you're a product team, you're mostly on your OKR. So being aware of that as a team, where you're going to be focusing most is really, really important. And it can dial up and down over time, but you want to know in advance of what that's going to look like. And again, there's a whole bunch of sort of thinking that you need to do off the back of this and what that means for a business and how much time people can spend on OKRs. But probably a little bit deep for tonight, especially at 9 o'clock at night. Okay, so look, I'm not going to go into the Scrum framework here because I think a lot of you are actually already on top of this. What I will talk about though is how does OKRs come into it? So the very quick version of Scrum, you're looking at your backlog for the next 2 weeks, you work out how much you think you can get through, and you choose your backlog off the back of that based on how much capacity you have. Now, to work out what you want to be working on, preferably you want to have a sprint goal. Now that sprint goal, if you're doing it as an OKR, this is really powerful. You take a variable slice of your OKR. So I've actually got a video on this topic that goes a little bit deeper, and maybe we'll send it out or pop it up on Meetup so you can have a look. But what I'd be doing is if I'm in a sprint team, I would look at what can I do over the next 2 weeks to nudge a number forward. So maybe I'm just going to have to focus in on increasing maybe I'm going to speed up the checkout time. That's all I can do. And you know what? I'm not going to do it for people who have multiple items in their cart. I'm going to do it just for people who have a single item in their cart. So I'm going to pick up stories out of my backlog. They're going to help me nudge that key result forward. It's not going to achieve the key result in 2 weeks. That'd be crazy, but I should be able to see that move forward. And so I'm going to play stories that progress us towards that. If I've got a good tech stack, I'm going to be releasing features or improvements as we go. And so I can see the numbers burn forward as we go along. So it's a really powerful way of baking that into your team's operating rhythm. Kanban's another useful way to do this as well. And again, you can Scrum ban it. So you've got a bit of best of both worlds. But basically, it's about creating that alignment around what key results are we driving forward. So you might have your OKRs up on the wall. You're going to have your different color coding for different types of work. So whether it's planned or unplanned and how it fits in. What you're going to do is maybe even think about different classes of service. So, over here we've got urgent, and there's probably, production incidents and things like that. They take a certain precedent. But for everything else, you're going to have policies around, well, okay, what OKRs do we focus on? If this is a mandatory OKR versus these are our 2 stretch. So for these, we want to hit about 70%. That one, we want to hit 100%. And again, I don't advise starting out like that. People do it. They've been doing this for a long time. I'd say for now, just go for make them all stretch 70%. But if you were in that sort of environment, maybe this one, you have a certain level where they get a certain precedent over the other ones. So you'd have different policies that help you with your Kanban. Where you can visualize it, you can visualize how you're burning up on certain metrics. That's really important. You got your team health metrics as well. These might be platform metrics, availability and those kind of things. Over here is going to be your cumulative flow diagram. Another topic for another time, but that's a bit of a team performance kind of diagram for those who haven't seen it before. And a nice simple indicator of how far are we into this cycle. And it's really easy to forget, particularly right now. Where are we in a timepiece? So having a nice visual indicator of here's how far we've gone and here's how our numbers are going. We're actually heading to where we want to head up to. So that's a very quick, in a nutshell, lens on how to apply this in Scrum, but also apply it in Kanban as well. The key thing with Kanban is think about your policies that you have around card prioritization selection and how they get handled, and even maybe dedicated swim lanes for different types of key results or planned versus unplanned work. So that's the key thing to think about as part of Kanban and OKR. There's also a portfolio view. There's a few ways of cutting this, color coding cards to the different OKRs. You might have different team colors. You also might actually do swim lanes to a given key result. So if you've got a portfolio of work, there's so many different ways to cut this. I wanted to throw this in here just to get the creative juices flowing. For those that are new to what a portfolio is, that's just basically a view of all of your projects. So what's everything going on within either technology or across the whole business, if that's the sort of level that you're playing at. But it gives you that one sort of mission control to see everything that's going on. You've got all your numbers and all your metrics in there. So it's a really powerful way of doing it. Again, choose your weapon, how you tackle it. There's lots of different ways. How are we doing for time? Sorry, I'm just going to check. Still got a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. Again, change management is absolutely critical. Have a champions network. Get a bunch of people that are into really driving outcomes in the business. Get them engaged if you're looking at introducing OKRs. Only do it if you've got a leadership who are wanting to shift to an outcome mindset. If you've got a waterfall leadership and there is no interest in that, they just want to plan projects and just sit down and get stuff done, you're going to have a really hard time. If you've got an organization that's actually trying to genuinely focus on creating customer experiences that are delightful and better, really great customer outcomes, and making the organization better as well, then that's where you'd start thinking about it. You want to have teams that have autonomy and can get that stuff done though as well. If you got a team that is, like let's say you've got if I think about some insurance companies, they might have someone who handles the phone calls, who then hands something to a claims officer who's going to look at an insurance claim, who then hands something off to a doctor or something like that. That kind of situation is going to be very hard for OKRs to work. But if all those people are in a pod working together to drive outcomes, it's like rocket fuel for a team. It's fantastic. Just get started, give it a crack. Make sure you're talking to team members about why you're doing this and the importance of it, but also getting their feedback on priorities. So actually go out and survey team members around what they think is most important. Do that no matter how large scale this gets. So if you're doing this as a whole organization and you're the CEO, go and get feedback from your teams. Don't make this a full-on top-down thing. A big lesson that Seek had during their sort of introduction to OKRs was people like a bit of steering and direction. They made it very much grassroots in the beginning, but over time it sort of evolved to being more of a bottom-up, top-down sort of approach where they understood our priorities, set those priorities for the teams, and they could then point into that. Have your weekly check-in, and key results must be metrics. Just remember that. Top mistakes. Look, manage the change, make it very easy. Don't do tick box key results where you've just got to deliver a whole bunch of stuff. They've got to be measures. Keep connected to the why. That's probably my really big one. Ian, I might handball to you, mate. I know you had this last one that I think was really important there as well. Number 7.
Don't remember what it was.
The leaders delegate the OKR process to teams.
Yeah,
so basically just say, you guys handle it.
The leaders need to get involved. It's learning OKRs is like a muscle. So you can't, the analogy I've got is you can't say, right, the whole company needs to get fit. Everyone needs to go to the gym. And then the leader doesn't get involved, because when it comes time for everyone to do something really hard, like 300 press ups, then the leader's going to struggle and they won't really be able to keep up, because it really is a mindset change. So the leader can't delegate this to someone to work out what the OKR should be. They need to be heavily involved.
Awesome. That's a really good call out. Look, I think we can leave that there. Everyone can read these sort of points and we'll share the deck afterwards. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to flick around a little bit in a moment. I can see some people have kicked off the survey, which is great. So we'll come back to that. So we're going to share our contact details. Reach out to us if you've got any questions or any feedback. What I would really love is for everyone to take away something from today. So for me, what's most important, and we will come back to this Q&A, but we might do that as a bit of an extra time thing. What I really wanted to see from people is, regardless of whether you're trying out OKRs now or not, from today, I want to see you take back to your teams the mindset that comes with that. So starting to shift your organization to being more of an outcome-based organization. So that would be really, really incredible for me if you could start getting that sort of direction going forward. If you are doing that, I would love to hear from you. If you're explicitly not going to do anything different off the back tonight, let me know, and that's going to give me feedback on our OKR. But I was going to hope that everyone has gone and actually going to go take at least a bigger step and a bit of bigger focus. Maybe this is something you've already been doing for a while, even just shifting to that outcome mindset. You're going to nudge that forward. While I'm ranting on here, and before we get into the discussion, sort of close out mode, and I'll hand back to Ian in a moment, we do have this survey. I can see people are filling out their responses at the moment. This is just about satisfaction and a few other questions as well. So how do you feel about it? What do you want to hear about for next time? So please do jump onto Slido and fill that out. Ian, over to you, mate. Any sort of key thoughts or something before we do a bit of a semi-wrap up?
No, not really. You've done a good job covering everything. So I reckon the thing that interests me most is, what do you want to learn about OKRs next? Because Tim and I were talking about, well, it's good to do an introductory, but how do we go deeper and help people go from it's only a 1 hour presentation, but how do we go to the second hour? So what do you want to learn about more? So I think, Tim, if people want to leave now after you filled in the survey, thank you for coming. If you want to stick around, I think, Tim, we go back through the questions that you had at the beginning. There's some interesting ones there. We'll stick around if you want to hear those discussed. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Yeah, my family's all gone to bed, so I've got nothing better to do all the time. Yeah, no, thank you everyone so much for coming along. Any questions at all, please hit us up. Always keen for a conversation or a yarn. It's really good stuff. We've got some free training coming out on this as well. So I know Ian said we could have a sales pitch. I'm not going to do the sales pitch. The free training that we're developing is genuine free training. Like it's going to be, how do you apply this at the team level? And there's no strings attached. It's not going to be one of those things where like I give you all the kind of hints just enough so that you can't actually do it. Like it will cover all that kind of stuff. So if you're up for that, we got that. And then that then leads to if you want to go into more transformation type stuff. So yeah, let me know if you want to be part of that. But otherwise, thank you everyone so much for making time tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Tim and Ian. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Great.
You too. Great to see you, Monica. Take care.
See you, Ian. See you, Tim. Take care.
Yeah. All right, Tim, do you want to go back to see if there's anyone left? There's still 25 minutes.
Are you finishing recording now?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
do
we can do that. Yeah.
You want to say something rude, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Anthony's always
I
got
want to
this.
protect the guilty. So
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, let's stop recording. Is there any reason I should? Yeah, I'll stop recording now. Before I stop, actually, do you think that might be useful to keep some of the discussion on some of these questions, Tim? Maybe we should cover some of those and then we'll stop recording.
So yeah, maybe just like a 5 minutes. Are you going to hang around for a little bit anyway, Andrew? Sorry, Anthony?
yeah, of course.
Yep, perfect. Sorry, my brain is a bit cooked at the moment.
Yeah, same. We'll cover a few of these and then we'll just
yeah,
time box
cool.
it
That way we
for like five minutes or so.
Yeah.
See how we go.
Excellent. So let's, and do jump on Slido and vote on these. We will try and come back to the other ones as well, but I might focus on the questions that people have sort of wrapped up on here and what sort of was front of mind. So how do we handle change in OKRs? So my quick version on that is you've got to be really careful changing your OKRs because it becomes such an easy excuse. In fact, you see, like for those that work in the Agile space, you would have seen Scrum teams do this all the time when they're starting out. They go, oh, you know what, this is all too hard and we're not quite sure about the backlog and we're just going to pause the sprint. We're going to start a new sprint or something like that. It becomes a bit of an easy way out. So I will only ever change an OKR. And I have done this several times. I've been through this lots of times where it hasn't gotten to this point. We've gotten so far through the quarter and then we've just realized the destination, the outcome we're trying to achieve was wrong. Like it is a bad idea doing what we're trying to achieve, in which case we'll shift. If strategy shifts in those kind of things, strategy is normally that sort of 12 months to 3 year kind of horizon. So it's less common to happen. So if it is strategy changing, I'd sort of be wondering why is that? But again, if there is a really fundamental shift where what you set out to do is no longer a good idea, then of course you change that course and change that path. And sometimes you just realize,
it's like a legitimate pivot.
Yeah.
Or we know that we're going to go down the path of sunk cost fallacy and we're not going to do it just because we set this OKR. We're going to follow common sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've spent so much on a building refurb to have everyone work out of the building, and now this pandemic is going to be with us for a long time to come.
That's hypothetically speaking, though, right, Anthony?
Oh, hypothetically.
Just make them go to the city anyway.
Yeah. Stuff them all onto the trains. No worries. Exactly right.
Make good use of that empty public transport.
Yeah, it's bang on. Well, this is the thing, right? We did a survey, so we did a state of the OKRs. It would have been probably about 2 months ago now. So the pandemic had that's when we published it. So the pandemic had sort of kicked in by a point, just sort of hearing how people were responding, and that is a big shift, right? That we've all felt it. So for most businesses we spoke to, they actually hadn't changed their OKRs at all. There were some that were like in travel industries and stuff like that. That like, of course, it was a big shift. But for a lot of them, it didn't change the OKRs, and for others, it actually didn't. It didn't change the way they did it either. So the majority, I'm going off the top of my head here, but it would have been about roughly half double down on OKRs. Another sort of 25% kept it roughly the same. And then there was a few people that scaled back slightly. No one dropped it altogether. So that was sort of the mix of what we saw as that. So
That's the practice as opposed to the specific objectives that they had already set.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
I was just trying to think. I reckon probably only about 5% of the OKRs have been involved in refining have been cancelled partway through the quarter. So quite relatively low numbers.
Yeah.
Well, if they're broad enough, right? If they're broad enough, it's easy to kind of
Ride the bumps.
use what you've learned to alter the expression.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to jump on the next one. I actually can't see the votes.
Actually, just on that, the objective and key results could stay the same, but you definitely should change your initiatives. If you're learning and you're not, let's say you're not getting anywhere, you can say, right, well, let's scrap all those other initiatives we thought might work. Let's pivot and come up with different initiatives, but for the same key results.
Yeah, thanks, Ian and Tim. I mean, that's what I was thinking, especially from an agile perspective. I mean, if things do change, and and in certain situations they will, whether the OKRs, they kind of, how do they kind of do they have a cascading effect, and how do we manage that, and so on. But no, some of those examples were really good.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a good call out. Yeah. And what
Should we talk about
Ian?
next? No, nothing.
I'm just wondering, we might crack through a few of these have at least a vote on them. So we'll hammer through these quite quickly, and then we can sort of open it back up. So encourage senior management. So you've got to find your champion at that executive level. So again, senior management depends on context of the organization. But regardless, really, you've got to find that advocate. And that advocate is someone who is agitated with the status quo and wants to see outcomes. They actually want to see that shift in mindset. And it can vary as well by, as you know, so I'm going to run with the executive team here, but it applies to any sort of senior team, how much support there is in that team for that. So if you've got a relatively progressive senior leadership team, if you find your executive and she's really passionate about this kind of stuff, then you're going to be in a really good stead, and she can influence those around her to make a big impact. If she's a lone wolf up there, you're going to really struggle to get that kind of drive. Doesn't mean that you can't do OKRs. In fact, with that senior support, you can actually really get a lot of good runs on it. But yeah, again, it comes back to solving their problem. How's it actually going to help them? And what's the value for them? If you can really make that tangible and solve some active problems that the business has and its customers, you're going to be set up for success at that point.
And it can spread as well, because we started in a group of about 250, and it's now grown across the upper level across to about 850. There's a long way to go to get across the whole
actually
bank.
raises an interesting question, Ian. It's like, when you say it can spread, that implies that you have a local OKR arrangement, but how do you then tie that into the existing measurement system, KPIs or whatever? I mean, there's going to be a boundary where you're going to get that rub and that friction.
Yeah, it's not as easy. Well, we had to
go, we're going to take what our KPI is and we're going to translate it into an OKR. And
no, we didn't talk about KPIs. We did manage to get a steer on. Well, we do have a vision for the whole bank. It's about. I'm going to fail at this now. It's about helping people and businesses. So how do you do that at your level? And when I say it's spread, it basically we had success locally in the 250, and then it's grown to 850, and still proof of concept at that level. But if it does grow, then IT teams 15,000, it could go right across that and then further. We'll see.
I think there's also a certain point where, I know in the organisation I'm in and previous ones, often the managers are left up to how they do their performance reviews and that sort of thing. So if you're using the ongoing OKRs throughout the whole year on a single team, and then it's the manager that's kind of doing the KPI bit at the level above to say, well, yeah, the team's meeting the KPI. So that they can be that sort of that individual as a buffer.
I think people have to be very careful about how they do that, because trying something and failing and learning and then spreading that knowledge is actually a good thing. So you've got to be careful how you measure success for people's bonuses and promotions and so on.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, And that's where so much of this is so context dependent, right? You know, you've got to really come back down to how is the organization being run and how are these teams being run. My observation has been, you know, because my style of this kind of stuff is I'll be relatively public with it within the organization we're working with. And so we'll do, you know, brown bags and those kind of things. And yeah, geez, I'm using a lot of really unhelpful analogies tonight, but you know, it's almost like spot fires, right? We've just come out of bloody fire season in Melbourne and New South Wales, but regardless, you know, it creates these sort of spot fires. And so from what I've seen, we've actually grown a lot of critical mass just by putting it out there and people seeing and understanding how does it function, how does it work, and really creating that sort of value from that. So, yeah.
Are you saying, Tim, that it creates outbreaks?
Yeah, it's
bad boy, Anthony.
I'm going between fires, you know, and you know, pandemic related things. So anyway, I want to roll tonight.
At least we're not talking about clusters this time.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, not going there. Okay. I didn't post this up as a question. It'll be a follow-up question. When you face off with those same managers who go, what, you're expecting me to replace performance management? How do I performance manage then? That's a separate conversation, but that gets invited. I've seen that happen from this discussion. Going, OKRs, yes, no, it's not tied to reward and performance because that creates an unsafe environment and sandbagging. Well, okay, well then how do I manage performance? Separate conversation, but very relevant to where we are.
Yeah, it's a deep one. I literally had a session on this. I can't work out what day it was yesterday. Look, it's my general thought on is, yeah, it's best to keep it separate. There are some businesses that link the two in. You know, Intel, where this was founded by Andy Grove, right? It's applied there, and it's down to the individual level. What we tend to find is you lose the sort of the return on investment as you get down to that kind of point. The complexity doesn't add a value beyond that. But yeah, for organizations that are really driving that, it has to be factored in. I think, you know, the achievement of OKRs still needs to be part of the performance conversation, but very much as a separate kind of activity. And it's something where it is another input. And this is where performance reviews, you know, my personal opinion is you can't have a formula that's going to give you a perfect sort of thing. And that's where, you know, like, you know, ranking and all those kind of things of team members is a really bad idea. The best thing to do is just have the conversation with your team member in the context of that. And yeah, obviously if you're working with a manager on this, you're going to have to help them and guide them through that. And it depends how their performance and reward structure is in place too, right? If they're going to be on the hook for this kind of stuff, it's going to be very hard to get them to shift how they're tackling it.
Might stop the recording and we can continue chatting.
Yeah.